welcome to our today's panel. I am very pleased to be with you today. It's a third webinar in our series together with Climate Governance Initiative Financial Sector Hub and McKinsey Company. I'm Lucyna Stańczak-Buczyńska. I am chairing CGI Financial Sector Hub. I'm also chairing Chapter 0 in Poland, and I am non-executive of some of the financial institutions in Europe. In our today's discussion, we will try to explore the relationship between banks and small businesses with the focus on the net zero transition. What we explore and experience today, that the financial sector is progressing with net zero targets. The challenge sometimes remain with small and medium-sized companies since they are facing the greatest hurdle to making this shift. In our discussion, we will try to examine the specific challenges encountered in the transition to the net zero, as well as would like to present a little bit of a global perspective, since among our panelists, we will have a prestigious group of the representatives from all over the world. So I will quickly move to the introduction of our presenter and our panelist speaker. I would like to start with Simona Viscardi. Simona will be the presenter today. Simona is a partner at McKinsey, part of the European Risk and Resilience practice and the sustainability practice, leading climate change in Europe and EMEA. She works extensively with financial institutions, both private and public, regulators and supervisors. Among the panelists, we will have Alexandrina Bojanova. Alexandrina is a professional banker with over 25 years of experience. Alexandrina currently is heading the Operational Management and Policy Support Division at EIB. Covering also climate and environment. Her current areas of responsibility include the design of operationalization of EIB climate and environmental related policy, new products, new green products development, and sustainability disclosure. We also have a pleasure to have among our panelists today, Jose Luis Munoz. Jose Luis is an executive director in sustainability and investors relation and Grupo Financiero Banorte, where he has the responsibility for bank's ESG strategy, overseeing initiatives like sustainable finance, green loans, and the collective decarbonization effort towards 2030 and 50. Under his leadership, Banorte has integrated ESG into core operations and reporting. Jose Luis grown his ESG team by around 30% and align international sustainability frameworks such as, among others, Net Zero Banking Alliance. Next presenter of our discussion panelist today is Mahmoud Tahir. Mahmoud is a head of sustainability of Bank of America from Morocco, where he also leads strategic analysis on macroeconomic trends, sector performance, and entrepreneurship ecosystem across Africa. Mahmoud played a key role in launching initiatives such as an observatory for entrepreneurs and the Institute of Africa, supporting data-driven investment and SME development across the entire continent. Last but not least, I'm also pleased to introduce Daniela Matthews. Daniela is a non-executive director at Commerzbank and chair of the ESG committee. She's also leading other listed and government-owned companies in the sector of infrastructure and mobility. As a former partner of Ernst & Young Germany and corporate governance leader in EMEA, Daniela co-founded the European Center for Board Effectiveness, a boutique for board advice on governance and transformation. Daniela is a FEE Financial Expert Association chair, a non-profit organization of about 400 non-executives directors in Germany. So we have a fantastic group of speakers for our today's session. We don't have too much time. We will start with the presentation by Simona, and then we will move to our discussion. We would be more than happy to get also your questions and comments to the presentation and then our discussion points. So please send your questions in the chat, and I will have a pleasure to moderate today, and I will try to get the questions and add it to our discussion. But first and foremost, I would like to invite Simona to give us a background information and set the scene for our discussion. So Simona, the floor is yours.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending where you are. And many thanks to Lucina for the introduction and to the Climate Governance Initiative to co-host this panel and this series of panels together with us. So as already said, I lead the sustainability for financial institutions and climate risk in Europe and EMA. And today I will give a scenario presentation on why we should talk about SMEs when we talk about transition, and where we think we stand in this debate. And ideally, this would open the floor to the panel discussions and to the very high caliber speaker that will discuss this topic afterwards. So why we should talk about SME? SMEs not only are more than 90% of the companies that we have worldwide, but what is most probably less known is that in certain sectors beyond the oil and gas and automotive, which are highly dominated most probably by large corporates, they really constitute more than 40% of the emissions that is being produced. So there is no transition if the SMEs are not going into the right direction and are not accompanying in this journey. And this is not only if we look to emissions, but this is also true if we look at pollution worldwide. And these numbers of 50% refers to OECD countries, which are the least normally polluting. However, this number could be even higher if we think about it worldwide. And then I would like to touch a point which is very close to my heart, which is the one of just transition. So when we talk about transition of SMEs, we are not talking only about decarbonization, we are also talking about the social impact on unemployment and on other social factors, and what is the implications and the transformation which is required from a reskilling perspective in this domain. So moving to the next page, we will give two ways of thinking about this discussion. The first one is related to regulation above all on reporting on disclosure in Europe and outside Europe. The second point is really the actual reality of facts in the financing domain and the initiatives that are undergoing. So if we think about, let's take Europe and let's take the regulatory angle for a second. As we know, in the last months with the omnibus package, there has been a slowdown of the requirements for SME. And in principle, we have been exposed over the last years to very stringent and demanding regulations. Over the last months, there has been a postponement of CSRD, of CS3D, a restriction of the requirements. In the case of CBAM, SMEs are normally not exposed to this anymore, given the threshold criteria which have been established. However, to all this movement, we need to say there are investors And there are think tanks and supervisors which are very worried about this kind of movement and are saying, we are okay with simplification. We think it's healthy. However, let's make sure that we don't turn into deregulation, because we need this information from SMEs, and we need, as we have seen in the previous page, these SMEs to become aware and to support the transition. If we go next page, outside Europe, the landscape that we are observing is more focused on reporting and disclosure, and it goes into the direction of creating schemes for both reporting on ESG and assessment of the value chains that are either mandatory, or as in Canada and Australia, or they are also voluntary in some other markets, but they are kind of setting the basis for what is expected in terms of information being published. So the direction of continue gathering information is the direction which is being followed. Of course, these countries were not at the level of detail of the EU regulations, and so a kind of level of detail which is closer to the IFRS S1 and S2 is being put forward. Now, moving to the next page. What are the real challenges that SMEs are facing? So the challenges that we observe are three types of challenges. The first one is related to capacity and capabilities. So more than half of SMEs are still saying that they don't have proper skills to face the climate emergency. So they don't feel prepared. From a data perspective, less than 10% of these companies are able to measure the carbon footprint that they have. And finally, this is something that we should reflect on. The most of them are still thinking that the access to finance is difficult. And it's for sure not because we don't have financing in the ecosystem, or there's no money to be spent on this in the ecosystem, but most probably the first two issues that we have outlined in this phase have also created some challenges in accessing to finance. Going to the next page, what do we think financial institutions, investors, think tanks, and also public authorities could do? So first of all, we think that it's useful to have a standardization of approach as much as possible. One example that we want to put forward is the one of the questionnaires, both for credit purposes, but also for disclosure purposes. So how to make sure that SMEs are requested the same information set by different banks, and as a consequence, that it's easier for them to produce this kind of information. And we'll see in the upcoming pages some initiatives that are already going towards this direction. The second point is related to public to private partnership, and to the development of sector-specific products and programs of facilitated lending, intermediated lending, and also how to really facilitate the process of assessing financing. In multiple cases, SMEs are facing a complex process, a long process, which they would struggle to complete, right? And we'll see also here in the next pages, we'll see an instrument that the EIB has created to facilitate this kind of step. And finally, everything which is creating the proper enablers. And I would divide into two main elements. The first one is data and tools. So how to put the data that we have in the system in terms of EU institutions, in terms of other institutions worldwide in a systematic way on disposal of SMEs without every company redoing the job on a continental level, on a country level, and also how to put tools on disposal, for example, for emission baselining, and how to put training programs, advisory services on disposal. Now, what is good, and I would move to the next page of all this discussion, is that across the world, there are multiple initiatives that are going into this direction already. And on this page, you can find some of them, and for sure it's not exhaustive. I'm sure that Alexandrina will talk later about the Green Eligibility Checker, which is really a self-assessment tool to facilitate the SME access to financing. The global platform or that the SME Climate Hub has established worldwide to really put together as much as possible resourcing and tools for SMEs to be guided into the process. Then we have some country level examples. The Greek example of the creation by the Hellenic Banking Association of a standard questionnaire for all companies, for all corporates and SMEs across banks. So this is a common questionnaire which has been created, and this makes sure that the companies need to provide information only once. Similar initiative, but on a disclosure front, has been run through the support of the EU Commission and DG Reform with the Italian authorities. In this case, we are talking about a single template for disclosure of SME, supported by a quite deep training program, which we have co-developed with these institutions. And finally, along the same line of disclosure, the Asian Capital Market Forum, which has set up a simplified guide for SME in the supply chain. And this notion of the supply chain is for sure extremely important, because SME are not look only as SME themselves, but they are part of the supply chain of bigger corporates. Now, moving to the next page. I think this is an illustrative list of initiatives that are more on the financing and on the capability building. So what we observe above all in Africa, and I'm sure Mamoun will talk about this, and also in Latin America with José Luis will take this part as well. We are observing multiple initiatives which are meant to provide technical assistance on one side to establish capabilities and to develop capabilities for SMEs, and on the other side, providing lending. And so to facilitate the access, and on the other side, provide blended lending at the conditions that should be established for this type of work. And I mean, the All Invest Verde is an outstanding program which is up and running from in 12 countries, but we are seeing supported by the multilateral development banks. Here we have 2 on the page, a significant growth of these initiatives, which are going into the right direction. So without further ado, I would leave the floor to our panelists to share their own experience in this respect. And over to you, Lucina. Thank you.
So, Simona, thank you so much for your introductory presentation. It's a perfect ground for our discussion at the moment. We see how many challenges are ahead of small businesses and how complex the landscape look like, given the fact that this is a big contributor to the economies globally. We see that there is a lack of competences, lack of data, challenges in the eventually supply chain, challenges related to reporting. So the financial sector has an enormous role to play as a facilitator, supporter, advisor to help the companies to go through this journey. And as I said, I'm specifically pleased that we have really a perspective from Latin America, North Africa, Europe, and can in this discussion have a look across the board. It's also quite useful because being or representing Climate Governance Initiative, where we gather the representatives from various geographies in the boardroom. We also, as non-executive board directors, need to tackle this discussion. Therefore, the better we understand the exact landscape and what can be offered is quite critical. So I will start our panel discussion. We have seen in a number of places that multilateral institutions were mentioned by Simona as a, let's say, catalyst for the change. So I will maybe start, Alexandrina, with you. As I understand, EIB is extremely ambitious on its own financing target for climate sustainability. I understand that you aim to support €1 trillion related investment by 2030. And in that context, how important or how relevant is small business financing in this target? How you can facilitate small business access to financing, I believe, alongside commercial banks.
Thank you very much, Lucina and Simona, for setting the scene. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. And as you, Lucina, I'm very happy to share the scene with colleagues from across the world, because indeed we have different perspectives, but at the same time we do have a common objective. As you said, the SMEs and the transition are two closely interlinked topics. One cannot happen with the other. Maybe just a couple of sentences, not really knowing who who has joined our webinar today about the EIB. So the EIB is the Bank of the European Union. It is also the EU Climate Bank. Our shareholders are the EU member states. The majority of our operations, around 90%, is in the EU and 10% outside the EU. We are the largest multilateral development bank, and we closely cooperate with other MDBs and IFIs, as well as with the commercial banking sector. As you said, Lucina, as the EU Climate Bank, we have set ourselves a very high ambition that at least 50% of what we do would be green, 100% of what we do would be Paris aligned, and we would mobilize also 1 trillion of private sector funding for the transition. SMEs are really a very important part of that commitment. We do, I would say, as the EIB, between 65 and 70 billion euros of new lending every year, and between a fifth and a third of that lending goes to the SMEs. We don't lend directly to the SMEs because this is not how our business model operates, but we work closely with other commercial banks and national promotional banks to pass on the EIB funding to the SMEs. SME is also one of our, as we are public policy-driven bank, SMEs is also one of the 4 policy goals. So indeed, we pay a lot of attention to that objectives. When we started our journey as the Climate Bank, just to give you an idea of how fast and how important the transition of SME green finance has been, the share of green in our intermediated lending for SMEs was around 8%. And today, 5 years into the implementation of our Climate Bank roadmap, this share has increased to 37%. So 37% of the loans for SMEs that we provide to our commercial banking partners is green. How did we do that? What was the strategy that we deployed? So it had two pillars, and I'm also making the link with what Simona mentioned in the beginning of her intervention. On one side, we need to have the framework. So we need to define what is green. We need a standard framework for all the banks to align. And this we have created through the green windows and our so-called green eligibility criteria, using the EU taxonomy, of course, as the main reference point. So what we as the EIB call green substantially contributes to climate and environment in line with the technical screening criteria of the taxonomy. As the EU bank, we have contributed to the development of the EU taxonomy, and of course it's one of our objectives to promote transparency and this unified standard through integration of the taxonomy into our green criteria. The second pillar is, of course, the technical assistance. We have created the Green Gateway, of which the most indeed famous tool is the Green Checker. And I invite everybody from the audience. It's a tool that can be accessed free of charge. If you just type in Google or access our website, you will see that the Green Checker is free of charge, very easy to use. Just very basic elements for SMEs and also for the intermediated banks to put into the checker that will actually provide you with an answer whether this investment is green and what are the other elements that you need to present to your bank or for the bank to assess to be able to engage with the counterpart. Because we will speak about this later. It was mentioned by Simona as well, the omnibus. To make the green transition successful, we need to simplify and we need to translate those complex criteria into something easy to use for the SMEs and also for the banking partners. Because we need to understand there are commercial banks on the panel, from their perspective, if the costs are also too, it's not only about data, missing data, that we help bridge, by the way, with the Green Checker and the Green Gateway more broadly, but it's also about the administrative costs for the commercial banks and for the SMEs to process this loan. So we need an incentive for the lending partner and we need an incentive for the SME population as well. This is why going forward in our second phase of the Climate Bank roadmap, which was kind of the main document, the Bible, if you will, which paved the way for EIB's climate ambition, we will focus very much on simplification and developing a risk-based and proportional approach for our SME population to facilitate the banks in the provision of green SME finance. We are also, in addition to our standard products, we're also thinking about developing innovative products for SMEs. One very good example I can give you is the energy efficiency measures. Energy, as was often said, the cheapest energy is the one that hasn't been spent. So now the emphasis on energy efficiency is really big, simply because there is a business case for it. The cost of energy is so high that if you don't invest in energy efficiency, you're probably likely to face big difficulties with your business. At the same time, to acquire the energy efficiency technologies and to pay for them upfront is a huge investment cost for the SMEs. So what we as the EIB have done in cooperation with the Solar Impulse and the of Bertrand Piccard and also of the European Commission is to develop what we call the SME Energy Efficiency initiative. So it's actually intermediaries that acquire the technologies, but they sell the energy efficiency savings as a service to the SME. So they don't have to spend that upfront cost, and they pay back from the savings that this technology provides to them. So we really need to think also not about developing the right tools like the Green Checker and the Green Gateway, where we support both the intermediary banks as well as the SMEs, but also indeed tailored financial instruments. I will stop here and we'll speak later about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandrina. It's extremely impressive how broad is the spectrum of activities with small businesses and the commercial banks. I think we will continue later on various products that are available and what the banking sector can offer. But I would like to move to Mexico or Latin America, and I would like to ask Jose Luis to give also your perspective from the region. Your bank is one of the leading financial institutions in Mexico. You have extremely strong SME focus, and it's a big part of your portfolio. How this collaboration between banks and small businesses look like in practice? We heard a long list of what is really needed, but how really banks, and looking from the commercial bank's perspective, how you can help building this internal capacity in small businesses to be more aligned to decarbonization and be a better player in the supply chain.
Sure, thank you. And first of all, thank you for the invitation. Very happy to share my thoughts here with the rest of the panelists. As you well mentioned, Mexico is it's an area with a lot of SMEs. It's one of the greatest challenges of Mexico, and I think in general of the Latin American region. Most of the companies that are there are SMEs, and that's the case for Banorte's portfolio. Just a quick background. Banorte, as you mentioned, operates in Mexico, only in Mexico. We do not do business outside of the country, and a large proportion of the customer base is corporates and then commercial companies and SMEs. So the first thing that we do as a company that is committed to decarbonization is to segment our portfolio based on industries and focus on the ones that have the greatest carbon emissions impact in our portfolio. Once we did that, we tried to focus initially on the larger SMEs because those are the ones that have, as Alexandrina was mentioning, the highest incentives to transition into a lower emissions economy. So we try to focus and start working with them. Another thing that has helped us to identify a little bit the needs of SMEs and our intentions to decarbonize the sector is to identify those SMEs that work with large corporates in their supply chain. I think there's also a collaboration between SMEs and large corporates because in order to become a supplier of a large corporate, you increasingly need to comply with some regulations. So we'd like to work with those companies that already see the need to comply and to transition, and to help them to be eligible to work with large corporates and to expand their business. So I think that's also been something that has been key for us at the bank, to identify those companies and start working with them. I think one of the challenges that we have had with SMEs is again the lack of incentives that some of them have because they see working in sustainable projects as something that is, first of all, a little bit unknown to them. They don't see the need to engage in what usually is an expensive and long-term project to shift their operations into lower emissions. So by focusing on the larger SMEs and working with them to build a business case for them, to show them what is the benefit for them on a cost basis to engage in a project that will reduce their emissions, will reduce their energy consumption, will reduce their water consumption, or some other metric that we would like them to improve. So in order to let's say build and sell that business case, you need to show them tangible benefits and when they will incur in those benefits. So I think that's a very different approach versus just identifying a project that is not necessarily green or sustainable. When you're trying to engage with sustainability in SMEs, you need to build that case. You need to show them what is the benefit, and that requires a little bit more time, more dedication, more preparation from the commercial teams, and that's something that it is encouraging that will gradually show results, but it is also true that you have to engage on a one-on-one basis with these clients. One final comment, and this is something that we plan to do more and more. This is not something that we have already started, but it's within our plans, is to start working with or organizing industry-specific events where the idea is to invite large corporates that participate in a particular industry and the largest SMEs that participate in that industry as well, and organize panels or webinars where the most mature industries can share a little bit of their journey, how they have switched or transitioned their operations into lower emissions, so that smaller companies can take away what are their benefits, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities that they see in that transition, and that there could be an open interaction in that forum to share best practices, and us as an organizing or facilitator for the event, support any projects that could be identified because of those events. So that's something that we want to do, to try to integrate as many clients in one event as possible, and then follow up individually with them based on the opportunities that were assessed during those panels. So I think those are some of the initial ideas that we're working on.
Thank you, Jose Luis. I think it's a very interesting list of some very practical examples. What is actually what can be the role of a commercial institution in promoting the transition to net zero economy among small business community of clients. It requires, though, work and commitment from the bank, and it's very encouraging that you see more and more financial institutions also seeing business opportunities in that exercise, no doubt about that, because these are relationships with clients that will stay longer, and this is how also you build your future healthy green portfolio. I would like to move on now to Mamoun. Your bank, Bank of Africa, is also quite dedicated and committed to support small businesses. You work with EBRD and IFC, so you can also share the perspective how this cooperation works. But what I wanted to ask you here is, what is your experience when working with small businesses about the level of awareness and where they are in transition, if you look at the Moroccan market or maybe more broadly, and what the banks can do, and what is actually your role in this transition?
Great. Okay. First, once again, thank you very much for this invitation. So far, I really find what has been presented really interesting, and I was really working on my phone just to be able to put on messages everything that you said. And I think Quebec will be delighted to receive the presentation from McKinsey, since it includes a lot of interesting information. As you said, and I will really stay in what just has been said by the EIB, by McKinsey as well, and by Jose Luis. The first step towards low carbon transition is raising awareness, as you said. And I really wrote what has been said is to link what they call the value chains between corporate companies to SMEs, and to be able to make sure that they are in the same decarbonization pattern. What we've been seeing in Morocco is really the fact that companies know that somewhere someone is talking about decarbonization, but they think that for the moment they might not be concerned. And this is where we stand. We see where the bank is arriving. And when McKinsey put the presentation at the very end, you say what are the tools to help the SMEs. One of the first one is, once again, raising awareness. So we really have been developing some specific tools. For example, we have been developing a share dedicated to sustainability and sustainable finance. This was our very first step. So we worked with 6 public and major universities and high school specific schools in Morocco to develop a whole ecosystem dedicated to decarbonization in Morocco through raising awareness. We, at the very beginning, we decided not to associate some experts, etc., but really to make some huge noise and to influence our ecosystem towards this. It was a very first step. Then, as has been said again, you have the legislation that can impose some specific targets on Moroccan companies. Once again, and it has been said perfectly by McKinsey, you have a withdrawal, or say in French, un recul, not a withdrawal, but just they are postponing some legislations like CSRD, for example, for 27 to 29, and some others. And this again mix the signals. For example, if you have a customer that comes to you because we're very linked to Europe, and then I will arrive to CBAM. When you go and see a customer and you tell him that for us it's really important for you to comply with or to abide by or anything like that, he will tell you first Europe is stepping back. The USA, and you saw so many great banks that have been posing their subscription to Net Zero Banking Association, and they follow this information. They will tell you, for the moment, we don't see this as a major, let's say, threat for us. The second thing is that they will tell you, we prefer, instead of investing in energy efficiency or decarbonization, and we're all talking the same language, they say, I prefer investing in production. And this is really when we arrive and we say one very simple thing, saying that if you invest in energy efficiency, and once again, the best energy is the one that you not consume, you will have an ROI between 3 to 4 years, which is and this length is shorter than the length of the loan that they will take, between 5 to 7 years. And now they start listening, and you tell them you don't have to choose between this and this, you can do both. And this is where they can understand. So the second thing is really to have financial education. First is raising awareness. Second is financial education. And the third thing I would say is what's happening through CBAM as of today. You know that Europe is protecting its market by putting like a carbon tax for every import coming from abroad. Morocco has a very strong position since it's only 14 kilometers away from Spain. I think that you know that Spain created a whole rail line between Algeciras and Valencia, and this rail line reduces the cost by 7 and it reduces the energy emissions by 5. So they understood that Morocco can be a big producer to export to Europe, And then we go and meet every sector. And this one, again, what Jose Luis said when he said that he's organizing events dedicated by sector. What we do is that we go and meet every sector that will be or activity that will be impacted by the CBAM. For example, for 2025, it was fertilizers, it was cement, it was steel, I think it was aluminum, something else. We do not export this except fertilizers, but the company is strong enough to have deployed or implemented its own decarbonization strategy, but by 2026, it will concern government, industry, and agribusiness. And this is where we will find many, many SMEs. And this is what we're doing right now. We are organizing, indeed, specific events dedicated to these companies. And once again, to teach them how to, first, what's CBAM, what will be the impact on them, and how the bank can help them. And the very interesting part, and just so we close with this idea, is that from the very beginning, we never worked only with our clients. We've been working with the whole SME ecosystem. This is really important because it's not about making money. The first step or the first wish, or even if it's wishful thinking, is to be able to contribute to strengthening the position of Moroccan companies and the Morocco economies, is just to maintain the competitiveness of our economy overall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mamoun. I am really very happy to hear what you have said, that we are sort of really looking at the business opportunity, business cases, that we see the perspective competitiveness of the small businesses, and linked very much the decarbonization and regulatory aspect into real life cases. I think it's quite important because this should be the predominant driver. And this also make it very clear that the support for small businesses to become stronger and understand better the market environment and learn from bigger companies or introduce innovative solution will contribute to the overall economy of our countries. I'm very convinced about that. I would like to move to Daniela. And Daniela, I'm very happy that you accepted our invitation. We will be more than happy to hear your perspective, like a representative for Eurozone area, where we heard that the regulatory aspect is maybe stronger and the expectation and the bar is probably higher. Commerzbank is also a bank that has a very strong footprint into SME business and green transition for a very long time already. So I would be very interested to hear your opinion on how really to support small businesses navigating in this complex environment, also having in mind the fact that the European Union started with a very heavy regulatory regime, then came to the conclusion actually this year about the need to simplify the regulatory requirements and put in place omnibus package, which was a little bit let's say, hectic time also for the banks and financial institutions. So what is really the bank's role? On one hand, dealing with all the regulatory requirements, but on the other hand, doing business with small businesses and help them how to, and at the same time, keep its own decarbonization targets. So would be happy to hear your perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm very happy that all the stories all over the globe are quite similar. You raised the regulatory issue in Europe, which might be a little bit special. But first of all, as you mentioned, SMEs are our major clients. They are our customer. That means we need and want to know what are the challenges, especially when it comes to the sustainability transformation. And what I personally think is that each bank has or plays two roles in that respect, strategically and operationally, especially when it comes to these regulatory environment and also the omnibus, which you were referring to. In my opinion, it's about balancing regulation and having impact and leadership in respect to decarbonization as a bank. And Commerzbank is committed to sustainability for many years already. And in that respect, and on one hand, Commerzbank acts also as a policy influencer. So we're providing actively feedback to the regulators based on our practical experience, especially when it comes to SME. And given the situation, new regulations, still complex, still evolving, so we are in the position to highlight unintended consequences by the regulator. We are in the position to identify gaps and to propose adjustment, which can make the policy much more effectively, much more feasible, especially for SMEs. So this role includes, that's our understanding, that we are very actively engaged in consultations. We participate in industry groups. We contribute to policy dialogues nationally and also at EU level. And I think this is a very, very important role which banks can do. On the other hand, banks are also able to function as a transformation enabler for SMEs, helping them to navigate to this regulatory environment, but also to support the transition. And I think that was coming out in the previous discussions already. But when it comes to regulation, but not only when it comes to sustainability regulation, SMEs often lack internal capacity to fully understand and to fully support the sustainability requirements and opportunities. And we as a Commerzbank, we can support. So we do address this by offering guidance, financial products, partnerships to lower the barrier a bit to entry for green investments, for instance. We also created a network, putting a bunch of providers together to support SMEs by their transformation journeys. I think it's quite similar, as you mentioned, it was mentioned before. So we help our customers how to measure a CO2 footprint, how to transform from brown to green energy. And I think that's important because, and I would like to say that very clearly as a bank, to keep decarbonization as a central objective, I think you have to align your services and your engagements, efforts with your target, but also with your overall climate targets. And that's the reason why we are still very much committed. And in our ESG committee, we ensure that it's not only a regulatory compliance, that on the other hand, environmental performance goes hand in hand. So we try to get that in respect to KPIs, measurements, etc. I think so. We do have an own interest to keep the track on the decarbonization part.
Well, this is again an excellent example, and thank you, Daniela, looking how the bank can also influence the regulatory landscape and provide the know-how to the policy decision makers on what are the practical solutions that can be taken on board. So actually, when we see the role of the financial institutions is practically expanding, we haven't touched base some of the solution like carbon footprint technologies, because there's a lot about technology, AI, and all sorts of solution and advisory that also banks are offering, or even invest themselves in this type of companies, which is this case of my organization, which is BNP Paribas, that made a number of investment and ESG tech companies that are servicing both big and large companies. And with great regret, I am looking at the clock. We have still quite a few questions for the discussions. I just didn't want to stop you in the middle because it was so insightful for all of us. And I do believe that, first of all, we have to continue with a similar session discussion maybe after the summer, because we haven't exhausted the topic, not at all. I think we can put together a list of very practical advices or recommendation. What is the optimum relationship or preferable relationship between bank and small businesses? What is in there? What is on offer through the development bank and what commercial banks are doing? And this is really a lot, and we don't always see that. I would like to conclude our discussion, and I would like to thank all of you really, really very warmly for making yourself available and having this session done in such an interesting, at least from my perspective, way. And I believe that this discussion between continents and see that actually, even though it seems to be completely different and some challenges are indeed different and stage of transition is different, but when it boils down to business, sometimes we see so many similarities. So big thanks to you all for taking time.